We'd love to know what organization you're representing so we can make sure we answer your questions. Please feel free to drop any questions throughout the entire webinar in the chat. I'm Tess Feigenbaum. I'm from Epic Renewal. I'm going to be your host today, and I'm joined by the lovely Sammie Paul, who is Executive Director at foodrecovery.org, and Robert Lee, who is co-founder and CEO at Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. You'll note we're recording that so that we can share this with you afterwards. We also have a quick resource guide that we'll share with you afterwards. So plenty of the orgs that we'll talk about today, you'll get a nice guide afterwards that will help you identify and find the right partner for what you're looking to do. So our goal today is to make sure that we're providing you with relevant information, resources, and help to answer any questions you might have about how to manage surplus food if you're a food generator, such as a caterer, restaurant, school, or hotel, or any other partner along the way of the possible food recovery journey. It's easy and it's the responsible thing to do, and it's highly encouraged, and we'll talk you through that a little bit more. But we are here to cheerlead and help and matchmake as best we can to make this easy for you. So we'll make sure that we cover why to donate your surplus food, liability protections and tax benefits, so you know you're backed up and supported throughout the way, food safety and handling, food donation receipts, the logistics of donating food, how to work with foodrecovery.org and Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, and when to work with each one, some additional recycling sources, and then we're going to reserve the last 15 minutes or so for Q&A, though we also have the ability to go over for anyone who has burning curious questions if we happen to come up on time. So please stay tuned. Make sure if a question pops up to you during the chat, please capture it so we make sure we answer it for you towards the end. All right, so let's start with the basics. For those of you who may not be familiar, this is the updated EPA wasted food scale. It's intended to serve as a guide for how to handle food, especially in regards to waste, excess, or what to do when you have too much and don't know where to go from there. So you'll notice it's a spectrum from most preferred to least preferred, and that's because pretty much every option on this list is a good one. The intention we like to share is that you want to aim for preventing wasted food in the first place, and that might involve some intentional planning, guidance, or support. But no matter what we do or how much we plan, we often always end up with a little bit extra or scraps or additional food materials we have to deal with, especially if you're hosting events or you're a major food generator. This will always be a need at different points of the cycle. So we're really privileged in the Rhode Island, Massachusetts area. We have a number of incredible organizations that work at different points along this spectrum. While we're going to focus on just a couple of these today, we want to make it really clear that we have a number of incredible allies and partners and friends in this field, some of who are on this call. And you'll notice in our follow-up resource afterwards is really a guide for when to use each of these and when they're the right fit for what you're trying to do. So hopefully that can serve as kind of a nice little menu for your moment of, oh my God, I have 300 pounds of food, what do I do? So to walk through this really quickly, obviously the most preferable option is not having any wasted food, though that's not always realistic. However, when you do have excess food, especially if it's edible, the best next thing to do is to make sure it feeds people before landfills. And that's exactly what Sammie and Robert are going to talk us through how to do, as that's their specialty. After that, it's ideal to either leave it unharvested in a field or feed animals. Following that is composting or anaerobic digestion. Again, this is another really fun area where we have a number of folks operating in this space. So the partner for you exists depending on what your needs are. After that, anaerobic digestion or sending it down the drain. So you can see there's a number of options along the way before you get to your garbage disposal or the landfill or incinerator. And every single org on this page does incredible work and is happy to jump in and support your work however they can. So one of the main things to know, and one of the very common questions we always get is this legal? What trouble can I get into? What if it's not handled properly? What is my risk in donating food? And the hardest bottom line we can possibly convey to you is it is absolutely legal and it's protected. So there's a federal Food Donation Improvement Act signed into law in 2023 that protects you if you're donating food. At the more local level, we also have a Rhode Island Food Donation Act. It covers food that might be past date if it's determined by the distributor to be wholesome. Essentially, there's a lot of flex here to make sure that if your food is edible, it's going to end up on someone's plate, not the landfill. Massachusetts similarly protects donations of food that's past date. And when we get to Sammie and Robert's section, you'll see they each kind of go into these a bit further and can answer your questions a bit deeper. But the big summary, 100% legal, totally protected, and strongly encouraged. We have the Federal Protecting Americans from Tax Heights Act that incentivizes business to donate eligible food products via enhanced tax credits. Those tax credits are a major high priority for the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. If you're operating in Rhode Island, we're working really hard to get similar tax credits in place, and most importantly, really easy to use so that you're getting a reward for the hard work and connection you're putting in to make sure this food ends up on plates. While Mass doesn't currently have any policy in place, they do have a bill encouraging the donation of food to persons in need, which is on its way to passing as well. So stay tuned, but the intentionality in both states is absolutely there and moving towards additional state level protections, though you're absolutely still protected at a federal level. And if you're ever nervous anywhere along this path, work with your food recovery partner and they can help make sure you're doing everything up to snuff and feel really confident in your process. Okay, so before we go really deep into rescuing leftover cuisine and foodrecovery.org's amazing work, I'd love to share a really quick bit about Epic Renewal and why we're here. So we work to build a zero waste world. We work with businesses, events, and individuals to reimagine their approach to waste, nurture soil health, and support equitable and resilient food systems. That almost without fail includes food recovery throughout our process. So while we traditionally have been a composter and we do a lot of event consulting throughout the process, which I'll talk about in a minute, there is always this step right in the middle where there's food that can be saved, rescued, or end up on somebody's plate rather than getting tossed. So we have the privilege of getting to work with partners like foodrecovery.org and Rescuing Leftover Cuisine all the time to make sure that we're really following that spectrum of the wasted food scale rather than taking a single approach to everything. Right here, you'll see Justin holding about half of 300 pounds of produce that were donated from last year's Newport Marathon. So it's present everywhere at events large or small. Our work really exists in two big areas. That's our zero waste services, which are the zero waste events that involves consulting from beginning to end, and business composting to set up consistent composting systems at your working site. In addition to that, we work to grow the composting industry through composting systems that are fast, small, and equipped for all kinds of different inputs, as well as developing nationwide software for community composters. So what does a zero waste event mean, and what does that look like when we're working with a company or a partner? I like to break it into these three stages, although it goes far beyond this, and it's much more of a relation and a creative joint process than it might look. The most important phase along this entire path is the before and the planning phase. We work with our clients really regularly to make sure they're thinking from beginning to end through how much food they're going to create in the first place, what's going to be produced, what's going to be put out on the table, and how, and making sure that for the during and after stages, we've considered where all of that food is going to end up, so it's not ending up in a landfill doing harm. We'll work closely with our partners to serve either compostable serveware or connect to reusables, including our own rental inventory. And we'll make sure that we always work closely with team, vendors, and any other partners who need to be onboarded to make this a smooth process. During our events, we lead zero waste stations, kind of like this top section. You can see we'll have composting, recycling, and landfill, and we'll often have staff there to help guide to make sure our guests are really throwing their stuff in the right place. We'll staff and we'll be there all the way along the way. After an event, we'll make sure that any food that can be recovered makes it to somebody's plate. And that is where Rescuing Leftover Cuisine or foodrecovery.org really come in. swinging and are super helpful. We will haul and compost, and then we'll always provide a detailed post-event report to help you really understand what you achieved this year and maximize what you're going to do next time. As a small shout out, this top right photo is the 83 rescuable meals from my own wedding that Rescuing Leftover Cuisine helped land on plates and make sure we're fed to someone instead of tossed. And that was with very intensive food waste management planning and making sure we wouldn't have a lot of leftovers. So there's always a moment to plug in with these partners and make sure you're really covering all ends. So when hosting an event or engaging in any food production process, I like to have my planning checklist. This looks like planning ahead of time to reduce excess food like we talked about, feeding people, not landfills first, and having a compost plan. Organizations like foodrecovery.org and Rescuing Leftover Cuisine make amazing partners for this stage and can help you all along the way. I'll note that foodrecovery.org really shines in ad hoc moments in terms of one-off engagements or donations. Rescuing Leftover Cuisine is who you want to plug in with if you're going to have recurring donations or a regular model with your business that you expect to be an ongoing engagement. We encourage folks to rethink their single-use items and florals, get their staff and vendors on board, plan communications and signage, and then measure and celebrate impact. So we're really making sure that everyone engaged in an event knows all of these steps, feels engaged, and feels empowered to make them happen successfully. So down here, these are 3 different assets from the Newport Marathon. One is a poster we put up demonstrating everything we achieved the year prior and inviting our guests to participate in doing even better this year. One is the post-event report that breaks down all of the materials as well as how to improve our layout and planning process. And the third is a social post celebrating the impact to make sure we're really sharing what's going on and demonstrating how easy this work can be when you're partnered with the right folks. So returning back to our EPA wasted food scale. Again, we have so many incredible people in this space, and we hope that our follow-up resources can be helpful to really make sure you're landing with the right person. Though I will very confidently say that the vast majority of folks on this page will hand you to the right person if they are not the right person. We're really fortunate to function as an ecosystem along this scale throughout our region and really make sure we're plugging gaps and thinking about our communities. So that said, I'd love to hand off to Sammie Paul and zoom in on foodrecovery.org and their work so you can learn a little bit more about them and when it's best to partner with them. Sammie, take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Tess, and thanks everyone for being here today. I'm Sammie with foodrecovery.org. Would love to share just a little bit more about our work. Just to give you a quick background, we're a nationwide food recovery organization connecting surplus food from businesses to nonprofits in need. I'm going to start off with a video. I think it's easier to just kind of see our work in action in Rhode Island. I will just preface this and say this video is from a couple years ago. We went through a rebrand this year. So we used to go by Means Database. We're now foodrecovery.org. But if you see Means Database reference, that's also us, just fresh name this year. But I'll pause for the video. I can't hear it. I'm not sure if, yeah.
We close to 300 people.
Oh, perfect. Thanks.
Donations are critical.
There was a food pantry in my church that I grew up working in. You would have way too much of one thing and would be in desperate need of a different thing. Inevitably, some of it would expire. And I ended up throwing a lot of it away. How can there be 40 million Americans going hungry and up to 40% of the food supply going to waste? That's such an obvious thing to fix. I know we're about to pull in a lot of donors. Means is an online platform. So when a charity needs food, they tell us. And when a retailer has that food, we let them know automatically. the claim time average for the state is unbelievable. The recipients in Rhode Island have just been on it, like every time. We are almost exclusively high school and college students, but we've helped find homes for about 1.8 million pounds of food since we opened in 2015.
Chicken, and more damn chicken. Now, when we have leftovers, in the morning, we'll pan it up, weigh it, label it.
All a business needs to do is head to our website, tell us what they've got and when they need it gone by.
8 pans of summer squash, 20 pans of chicken. It's available today. I just hit post.
Oh, it's 500 pounds. 8 pans of summer squash, 20 pans of barbecue chicken, and 28 agencies were notified.
Chicken, summer squash, rice, blank steak. I get a text, and assuming nobody has gotten there first, I claim the food.
This has not been claimed. It has turned green. You would really think that the novelty of it would wear off. It doesn't.
All right, I'll see you in a little while.
We're able to match up excess and need very, very quickly.
There he is. Good to see you. The people that are picking it up definitely need it. It's a win-win all the way around.
This is really 4 or 5 meals. It's big. That's the week. The simplicity of it. The fact that there's a text. And here's the food. It's magic. All right, there's lunch. We picked this food up 40 minutes ago. It's already on its way to the table. It's exciting that food that had a whole other job yesterday found this way better job today. How was lunch? Did we do okay? Yeah.
I'm definitely not having a normal college experience. What makes it worth it is knowing we're building something that matters a lot more than we do.
Awesome. Thanks a ton. So yeah, you can see that was from 2019. So lots of change in the past couple of years, but our core programming is the same. We have an online platform to quickly match up businesses with extra food to nearby nonprofits. You could see a few clips of the online donation form and platform there. So our 2 major goals are to reduce food waste and then reroute any surplus food to those in need. It's free to donate on our platform, finds recipients very quickly from the time that usually when Two Rivers Casino posts, within 2 or 3 minutes, somebody's claimed it. So it's a pretty quick process. Like Tess mentioned before, you're fully protected from liability as a business donating. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that we've seen just across all food businesses is a lot of fear around donation, and just want to assure that it is both legal, safe, and encouraged. We have 3,000 partners nationwide that work with us to either donate food or receive food from our platform. And because you're donating to a nonprofit organization, you can receive enhanced tax deduction from your donations. To specifically zoom in on Rhode Island and Massachusetts, we started off in 2017 in partnership with the Rhode Island Department of Health on their Road to End Hunger initiative. That was really stemmed from the misconception around donation liability that has been a thread throughout this whole webinar. The Department of Health said this is a reason a lot of people aren't donating. We did an informational campaign together just to get the word out to more businesses to encourage donation. Then in 2020 and 2021, with all of the shutdowns and changes that happened with the COVID pandemic, we started a community meal program. This looked a little bit different than our usual work to recover surplus food. We worked with small businesses. You can see this picture on the bottom left here is Luis from an empanada shop in Providence. We purchased catering orders from him, and he made usually about 300 meals every week, delivered them to different community fridges in Providence in the area. So that was just a great program, win-win, to support businesses through the difficult times and a lot less business that they were seeing compared to usual. Also supporting the extra need that we really saw during that time. Then we got our first EPA grant with Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. So they've been a great partner the past 3 years. We're just finishing up our 3rd grant now, working just to continue to expand food recovery work in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, branching out more into the New England area. And it's, yeah, like Tess mentioned earlier, a win-win. We're really built for an ad hoc kind of, oh, last minute I have this surplus, let me post out, see who's available, whereas RLC really builds a lot more of those recurring steady donations. So kind of, yeah, just a perfect partnership working hand in hand. So we're continuing to work together to recover more food. We recover anything from 40 pounds of surplus from a restaurant or a bakery up to 40,000 pounds from a warehouse. We've recovered 293,000 pounds of food in Rhode Island and Massachusetts over the past few years. To dive in a little bit deeper to the Food Donation Act of 2021, this was an addition and a strengthening of the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act from 1997. So this is just a building, a growing, a strengthening of that. It includes any food business. You can see the list here: grocers, wholesalers, caterers, schools can donate food to any nonprofit organization. Also, the enhancement with this 2021 Act is you can now donate to individuals directly. So as long as you're donating in apparent good faith and the product is apparently wholesome, you are free from liability. And this is a federal protection that covers, yeah, all donors, all donations. So you should feel good to go and assured that, yeah, you're not liable for anything that happens from your donations. Here's just a quick testimonial from one of our partners at Flick. Sarah's amazing and leads the company at an office building. They were seeing a lot of fluctuation the past couple years as the building decided to return to office, and then a few days later would send everybody back home. So the ordering on her end was tough because she had to order a week out usually to get food in. But we've been partnered with them for several years. She's shared that it's very easy to donate food, use our platform, and it's just a great feeling to know that the food that her team is working hard to make, even the surplus, is enjoyed and gets out there to the community members in need. And that's it for me. There's my contact info. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if you'd like to work together. And with that, I'll pass over to Robert.
Thanks so much, Sammie. And thanks so much for everyone showing up today. Really appreciate the time. I also wanted to have a special shout out for Dana. Huge help in putting all this together, and really, really great partnerships all around with foodrecovery.org and Epic Renewal. I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about rescuing our cuisine, and I kind of, wanted to talk a little bit about, food loss and how really it's applicable to everyone. I think, I know we've obviously covered a lot already to get today, but in terms of kind of, me talking about wasted food and food loss and food away, I feel like there's a lot of really good distinctions and things that we want to be talking about when we talk about really good food being rescued and donated before it actually becomes wasted food, right? And so I wanted to kind of clearly delineate that. And again, a huge kind of kudos to Dana on this call, I believe, who had really spearheaded this and pushed this within our organization when she used to work at RLC. But truly, as you all know, and as I'm sure I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, so much food goes to waste. And as you saw in the video, it's just a common sense solution that really should be commonplace, right? And it's something that is super key, obviously, and super urgent because food insecurity, as many of you may know, is unfortunately going in the wrong direction. A new report that came out just at the beginning of September has shown that 13.5% of Americans are facing food insecurity, up from the previous year and the year before that. And specifically in Rhode Island, 31% of Rhode Island households are facing food insecurity, while of course all this food is just contributing to methane gases, 30 times worse for the environment than carbon dioxide. And the other piece that many people don't really think about is landfills have kind of an expiration date. They can fill up, they can have a max capacity, and it's not just a problem that can be kicked down the road. It's a problem that we need to be thinking about now. And landfills can extend their life and extend their usage by ensuring that we compost and ensure that food, organic waste, doesn't end up in landfills. And so it's just all of our problems, and we can all do something to change this system where we currently allow all this food, amazing food, to go to waste. And so a little bit about our solution. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We incentivize businesses to work with us to rescue that food. We do, as a 501c3, we do charge for our services. And so we expect and hope that our food businesses who are on the for-profit side are able to see that bottom line impact by getting enhanced tax deductions. I can talk more about that in case people are interested as well. But there's an incentive for folks to actually get, more money back than they would get in just throwing out the food and getting a general cost of doing business deduction. And so we want to be able to kind of help our partners see that benefit of donating the food. As you can see from the picture, the staff is really happy to do it. There's always all these intangibles that kind of come as well, along with getting the enhanced tax deductions, reducing your food disposal costs, and associating with the green mission. As similar to foodrecovery.org, we work with nonprofits of all kinds of capacities to sign up for free and receive this excess food so that they can actually, not buy food and use that for long-term services and housing and other things that they may need. We also have volunteerism as a core component of our model. And so we have individuals who can sign up online and actually rescue the food from one place to another. But we also actually have some of our opportunities as a paid opportunity. So some DoorDash drivers and gig economy workers are also on our platform and get paid to rescue the food from one place to another. Typically the ones where it's unpopular, like Friday nights or times when people want to be partying or doing something else other than volunteering and rescuing food. But we do mostly work within that tech-driven solution, trying to be as efficient as possible. And I'll have a little bit of a snapshot later on of that platform. But in terms of our impact over the past 11 years, since we started in 2013, we rescued over 15 million pounds of food, providing 12.5 million meals. It's incredible to think about how all these smaller kind of food rescue kind of efforts add up to a huge amount. And people sometimes think, oh man, food waste, hunger, it's just huge age-old problems that they can't really make a difference in, but truly we all can, and we can do something, even if it's small, to fight these two problems that really shouldn't coexist. And so the best thing I think is really that it's really short. Each food rescue event, it's about an average of 75 minutes, sometimes less than an hour, from start to finish, from when you even start to final finish. And it's super easy, super simple, and it truly adds up. Specifically in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, we have a little bit of a map just to on the next slide see a little bit of your impact, maybe your food business or your location. Just on the next slide here, we have maybe you can see yourselves here, right? We've been around for a while, and we're happy to work with you, and we want to have it so that we're every single location, right? I think wherever there's people, there's food, and wherever there's food, there's excess food. And we want to make sure that we bring that excess food to people who need it. And so again, huge shout out to Dana, starting the Rhode Island branch, heading up the Massachusetts branch. I don't know if she's on anymore, but just a huge, we wouldn't be around if not for our volunteers and people who are passionate about this, doing this. And in terms of how it kind of works for those who are interested in partnering with us as a food donor partner, we only work with licensed food businesses to ensure that the food quality is there, to ensure that we're not rescuing food from like households that may not know how to ensure food safety. But essentially, we work with the food businesses to ensure that they package their food and bring it down to the right temperatures. They tell us you may tell us a schedule. Let's say you do inventory on Mondays or Fridays or whatever it is. And essentially we're there in that time range to pick it up. We have a rescuer who's either a volunteer or a paid rescuer, but regardless, they'll be professional, always on time and always there to be helpful. And then they rescue it directly over. We don't bank the food. We're not a food bank. We just kind of do the transportation logistics so that your food can go safely to the nonprofit recipient in a direct and short amount of time. And then, of course, the food is actually going to be used and stored typically over the course of 24 to 48 hours. But essentially, there are a lot of food banks, home shelters, soup kitchens that are able to actually use the food and are expert at that. And so we partner with them to ensure that the food is going to the right people who need that food desperately. And, we like to say that, we want to make it as convenient to donate the food as it is to throw out the food. And you can think of us as kind of a, rideshare platform for surplus food donations. You may be wondering what it looks like. This is what it looks like. This is just a quick snapshot of a portal, a page for someone who logs in. They can dig in is a nice example, as you saw in the picture before. But essentially, as soon as you log in, you can see your impact, the number of pounds of food, number of meals that you've been able to provide. You can change your contact information in case you've changed to contact folks, or even your location, or if you're adding a location, all those things. You can easily cancel pickups in case you may not have operations that day or whatever it is. And of course, you can actually schedule one-off donations. And just to clarify here, these are one-off that are not ad hoc. Ad hoc is really great for to be done by foodrecovery.org. We unfortunately need a little bit more time as we have these scheduled recurring donations. But if the scheduled donation that's in the future, that's a one-off, that's definitely doable. And of course, you can change your recurring schedule there on the bottom and manage it. And if you have like a security system, you can see what rescuers coming, put them on the system, and do what you need to do. But overall, the whole kind of idea is to make it as easy as possible, right? You can log in here, you can look at your contacts, change your contacts. You might have an invoice to contact. You may, want to have your documents for receipts to ensure that you can, get your enhanced tax deductions. All of that's there. You can look at your donation history in case you're, presenting or talking to folks about what you've done. You can kind of pull all that information here, as well as, of course, pay your invoices and make it all super seamless all throughout this technology. Super proud to have a 99% coverage rate to ensure that your food is going to people who need it. So we're really kind of, harping on this reliability piece because we want food rescue to be the universal standard. And for that to happen, it needs to be a reliable professional service. So all of that is there on the platform and for you to easily do. The last thing I'll kind of leave you with is, I know we've covered it a lot and we've mentioned it quite a bit already, but when I first started in 2013, people thought it was illegal. I used to work at JP Morgan full time, and when I quit my job, my former boss was like, you're quitting your job to do something illegal, right? And so, I just still, it's remarkable to see that I think more and more people know that food rescue is not illegal. But it's one of the reasons why our name is Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, because we wanted to be super obvious what we did. And so I just wanted to mention one last time, food donation is really great. It's really encouraged for food businesses, and honestly any business, from stadiums to venues to, conferences. But, PR wise, it's just a huge, boon. Really great positive brand association. More and more Gen Z, etc., really want this to be a thing, really expect it to be a thing. And on the liability side, we, I know Tess and Sammie have already gone through all of these. But, on the RLC side, we also provide a hold harmless clause. So we're happy to hold you harmless. And ultimately, I know for food business and for any business, really, bottom line is most important. And so we can help you walk you through the steps of reducing your food disposal costs, walking you through the enhanced tax deductions, lesser up, twice your basis cost or half your profit margin plus your basis cost, all that. We're happy to help you. But truly, we want this to be a habit. We want this to be something that is universal. And so just wanted to, mention that again, that is super encouraged and super great for business. But with that, I'll, close it out and open the floor to questions. So looks like
Yeah, David, please jump in.
Yeah, great content, really important component to, Rhode Island's plans for food and also solid waste. So big shout out there. A general question I had, and I refer back to, I think, a slide in terms of the work in Rhode Island and Massachusetts is that initiation with the Road to End Hunger initiative. And I was wondering if anyone can speak to an understanding or a context as to where that initiative exists today.
Yeah, great question. That was within the Rhode Island Department of Health. There was an intern named Christy Whitcomb who was working under I think it was this food safety arm of the Department of Health. So she kicked off that initiative. And yeah, that's kind of where that lived, was within the food safety branch. Of the Department of Health.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
and Heather.
Hi, thank you so much for putting this together. It's super helpful, and I love how you're partnering together to figure out, like, if you have this and it's a one-time, go here. Totally love that. I was wondering if we could get a little bit more into the details of like your service area, and I saw that there was like from 40 pounds to 40,000, but I was wondering if there's like a minimum amount in order to participate. And then I want to talk about temperature later. So if we could cover the first two, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. From our side, foodrecovery.org, you could post from anywhere. We're completely open. We're a bit different because we're just sort of this communication platform. We don't have drivers guaranteed included. So yeah, you can post any amount of food. We do have a few drivers that we work with. If the nonprofit can't pick up themselves, we'll see if a driver is available. We don't have as strong of a driver network as RLC, which is kind of why we're more on the ad hoc side. But for a driver to pick up from our side, it needs to be at minimum 40 pounds, but you're still welcome to post if you have 5 pounds, 10 pounds. We have a couple cafes that usually have like 25 pounds, and they'll post, and then we just have the nonprofit pick up. And I think hopefully that answers the first two. I'll pass to Robert.
Yeah, our locations are kind of the greater Boston area and Rhode Island. In terms of minimums, we typically like to say that we have no minimum pound requirement. But we also tell our food donor partners, if you have like 5 pounds of food, typically you can, split that up and, take it home and things like that. It's really, really small. But honestly, if it's 5-10 pounds, and it's a recurring thing, then we can definitely set up a food rescue route and find a home for it.
Thanks. I was particularly thinking about schools, and when they have share tables and may not be able to redistribute that by the end of the day, they may like to have it picked up on a daily basis as opposed to holding it until the end of the week. But that's kind of where that small amount comes into play with me.
Yeah, on the school side for Rhode Island at least, I don't know if you've chatted before with Jim and Warren from the Rhode Island School Food Recycling Project. They're incredible and really, really hands-on, in-depth. They come into the schools. I know they just got another grant from, oh, I don't know, somewhere in Rhode Island, but I know they're expanding within Rhode Island, but they come into the schools, get students really, really involved. They do share tables, and I know they're working because they're kind of coming across the same challenge you're seeing, Heather, of there's this kind of odd amount of food. It's not enough to send home with kids, but we only want to do once a week pickup. So they're working on having it stored in the school fridges or to have an extra fridge that's accessible to students and families. So maybe when parents are doing pickups or before schools get or before students get back on the bus, they can stop by the fridge and pick up a little bit of extra from the share table if it's the end of the day, whatever it may be. So oh, perfect. That's great to know, Carla, in the chat. But yeah, I think that we have Warren's and Jim's contact information, but if not, we'll send it to you if you want to chat with them more about their school experts.
Fantastic. I can't see hands, so if someone else has a hand, they should go. Otherwise, I'll ask about temperature.
No, I think you can go for it.
Okay. Actually, Robert, you mentioned cooling, packaging and cooling to temperature, and I guess I was curious about if either of you will pick up items that are hot and they get delivered like with, as still hot, or if things need to be chilled, and do the volunteers have coolers or take temperatures or thermal blankets, or is it just in the car for such a short amount of time that it doesn't need that? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we want to make sure that we're always adhering to food safety standards. With anything that we're doing, we want to ensure that there's never any issues with food safety, food quality, right? So super, super important. We ensure that all food that we rescue is with a food business that's licensed and knows what they're doing and has a food safety license. And we ensure that basically any hazardous, potentially hazardous food is not left out in the temperature danger zone, which is 40 degrees to 140 degrees for more than 4 hours, right? So essentially, if we have a food donor partner who's interested in donating food and keeps it in hot holding, and essentially tells us that that's what they're looking to donate, we essentially work with that food donor partner to ensure that we can transport that food within that amount of time, and the nonprofit recipient receives it and also puts it in hot holding. So we're happy to, work with the food business and ensure that we transport in the best way possible. Most of the time, though, our food donor partners do like to properly cool it down and then donate when it's actually chilled. Mostly because our nonprofit recipients can't typically, distribute it out the hot holded food so quickly. So, but we do have certain cases like that from time to time. And to answer, kind of the second piece of that, our volunteers, if you think about kind of a DoorDash or like a Uber Eats delivery driver, they essentially transport the food from place to place. They're not opening the food. Our volunteers and rescuers are not opening the food. They're not handling it. They're just transporting the food. And so that's, they do have, sometimes they like reuse things like Amazon fresh bags and that kind of stuff. But we do everything within that allotted time to ensure that the food safety is met. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add there, Sammie. But...
No, yeah, very similar from our side. The time that the food travels between food donor, the business donating, and the nonprofit recipient, we make sure it's less than 45 minutes with traffic and everything. So we keep it to a pretty tight range, especially for food that needs temperature control. For other things like bakery items, we're like, oh, if it goes a bit further, that's less of a time crunch. And then for any palletized donations, I don't know if anybody here is with a warehouse or distribution center, but we have reefer trucks and do temperature checks on all of them. Make sure that we check the temperature log. So any palletized larger donation that's coming from a warehouse, those are usually traveling quite a bit longer. It takes more than 45 minutes usually just to load the truck. So all of that is temperature controlled vehicles.
Thank you. It's really helpful to hear that so that we can pass that information along to anyone who might wonder.
There any other burning questions? Feel free to throw them in the chat too if you don't feel like unmuting.
Hi, this is Rob Gilman, and this has been a great presentation. I work with the Environmental Protection Agency and do some work looking at food waste recovery, food recovery. The question that I have, it's always been interesting to me, is how these efforts fit into the larger food recovery ecosystem with food banks. And my understanding is that there's just so many small suppliers with short-term needs, and then this has been something that's been overlooked, and this is where these great efforts have focused. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, we work with food banks, especially on palletized loads, but we try to give, and Robert, I think mentioned this in your presentation as well, but when we can go directly to individuals or go directly to, like you saw in the video, a shelter or another group that's distributing to those in need directly, especially for things like prepared meals, and amounts that are less than a pallet, or even I've heard some food banks don't take anything less than 5 pallets. We work with a lot of different partners just to make sure we still are getting that food to those in need. And food banks usually work at larger scales, so we're kind of filling in that smaller scale that they usually just don't pick up, don't have the capacity to cover.
And so one question that I have is there a point where there's a overlap? In other words, food banks are trying to go for smaller and smaller sizes and deliveries, and these efforts are growing into larger programs, or is there still so much space, or do you find that you have to coordinate or communicate around these efforts?
Just from my point of view, there is so much surplus food that isn't even getting recovered that we really try not to step on toes. If there's already a partnership set up, we're like, great, we'll go after other food opportunities. I also know I live in New York City, even though this presentation is about Rhode Island, Massachusetts. And in New York City, there's 2 really large food banking groups. One is the Food Bank of New York City. They purchase 95% of their food. So only 5% is actually coming from donated surplus. So what we do, they're like, this is like completely separate. They're like, we have all these grants, we do all this food purchasing. And that's what a lot of food banks do, is purchase at a discounted rate. There's also another organization called City Harvest, which does a lot of surplus food recovery in the city and in the general area. I also have heard a lot of times, we partner with them. I had a meeting with them last week. They have their schedule of trucks, and they're like, hey, we have our schedule. If we get a call about another donation, we don't have room in our schedule. Can you guys pick up? So really just trying to foster more partnerships in this space. Like, we work so well with RLC, and realizing that we're all nonprofits, we have very limited resources. Let's combine and share where we can to make the most impact. And I haven't found much, stepping on toes, us trying to grab the same partnerships. There really is so much food out there that I think we need even more organizations in the space to just capture more of that surplus food.
Great, thanks for the answer.
And just want to point out Matthew's question in the chat about packaging standards. Are pans or containers available? Are there labels for the food standard or printed for information needed? What are the reheat requirements?
On our side, we do not provide pans containers, but we are happy to purchase and kind of send on the food donor's behalf. And sometimes we can get discounted rates and things like that. Labels are not standardized. We refer to our food donor partners and their standard methods to ensure that allergens and different things that should be mentioned are all mentioned, dated, etc. But yeah, that's how we operate. Pass to Sammie in case there's any other.
Yeah, really the same. We kind of leave it in the donor's court to use what packages you already have. We tried for a while to standardize our packaging, and we're shipping out certain containers, and some groups like, oh, we don't have the storage space for this. Our kitchen's really small. Can't we just use the packaging we already have? So we got, yeah, people didn't love it. So we just kind of said, okay, however you guys usually package, we'll leave it to you.
I think part of that was reheating instructions. Is that from the donor about where that would happen?
Yeah, on our side, we don't really get that many like specific reheating instructions. But if there is anything specific that our nonprofit recipient needs to know about the food and how to specifically, reheat it up, if there's a special way to do it, then our food donor partners pass us the word. But yeah, all of that comes from the food donor partner.
Do you offer service in any other languages, like translations or interpretation?
On our side, foodrecovery.org, our website is translated into Spanish. I think you just have to go to like the bottom, and there's a way to navigate to it. We're working on updating our one-pagers and other written materials that are off of our website, and hopefully can expand for more languages soon. Right now, it's just English and Spanish.
Right now, we're only English. Our one pages, we did have a Spanish and Chinese version, but we haven't updated them in like probably 8 years. Carla, in terms of your question about the one pager and flyer, definitely. And I think Tess may have mentioned this as well, but we're gonna follow up with a bunch of resources. We'll make sure that that one page is included in there.
You are absolutely welcome to share that document far and wide, though it is not going to be as pretty as either RLC or Food Recovery's one-pagers. All right, well, if there are no more questions, we can wrap.
I'll jump in with a last minute question.
Yeah.
Go on.
How has participation been from some of our business leaders, like the Textron, the CVS, like our big, huge corporate leaders here in the state? Have we wrangled them in? Are they on board? Are they participating already, or is that on the to-do list?
That's kind of on the to-do. We've been trying to reach out, especially, I know CVS, we've applied for grants. I've been trying to just reach the right person there. I think that from what I've seen, sometimes the bigger the business, the more challenging it is to work with them, even though it does seem like, oh my gosh, there's all these stores, what an opportunity. But there's just a lot of cooks in the kitchen. I think a lot of times if we do meet with somebody at the corporate office, they're really excited about the impact and the metrics. By the time it gets down to the store is like, oh, just one more thing for us to do on a very busy schedule, which is also understandable. I've worked at a restaurant for many years. I get sometimes when stuff comes from the higher ups of like, oh yeah, just throw this into all the million other things you're doing. It can be a bit frustrating. And then also sometimes there's mixed messaging with what you can and cannot donate. A lot of when we reach out directly to the store manager or people that are actually managing the surplus product, they're like, oh, well, corporate says we can't donate. And, oh, well, it's bad PR if we donate. We don't want pictures. We don't want people to know. So yeah, unfortunately on our side, we haven't had any luck. UNFI is a big corporate partner though of ours, and they are based in Rhode Island. So UNFI has been great, but we've had a bit of a hard time with other yeah, chains and larger groups. But I'll pass to Robert. Hopefully you've had better luck.
Nah, similar story. I think you know, a lot of larger groups you know, want to make a difference, but the, you know, corporate engine, unfortunately, sometimes is geared towards maximizing profit, and they don't see this as a priority as of yet. But hopefully we can change that. But yeah, I think there's still plenty, you know, I think the fact remains, as Sammie had mentioned previously, that of the 40% of food that goes to waste, it's just there's a huge, huge amount of that that is just not being rescued, not being thought of. So definitely a lot of potential.
Last chance for any more burning questions. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us. Hold on. I'm freezing up. Thank you so much for joining us. When my share screen decides to function, there will be our contact information.
Thank you for hosting. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. Please feel free to reach out to any or all of us if we can ever support you in your work and help connect the pieces to make this happen, or answer questions that might occur to you after the fact. We'll be sure to follow up with that resource doc as well as the recording of this presentation, and appreciate everyone jumping on and joining us for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.